good afternoon. I hope everybody had a good lunch, and we're about to start the afternoon session, and I would like to introduce Dr. Rawad Hammad, who is with King's College London, involved in research and senior educational solutions, and Ihab Tewfik, who is a program leader within human nutrition with the University of Westminster. Siraj, again from this morning, representing the University of East London and one of the main sponsors with the UN of this event today. And after this session as well, we will receive an address from Dr. Petru Dumitriu, who is the coordinator for UN Policy and Research Project from the Joint Inspection Unit from the United Nations, and he'll be joining us from Geneva. And my understanding is I think we have 15 minutes per presentation. Yes. So if I could first introduce Dr. Rawad to give his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming after this nice lunch. I'll start my talk today. The title is about using artificial intelligence and digital transformation to develop a sustainable educational system. So that's the main topic that we are going to talk today. In a very quick way, the agenda that we will have today will talk about digital transformation and then we'll talk about a little bit about artificial intelligence, and then we see if we can utilize artificial intelligence in order to develop a sustainable educational system, and by the end we'll talk about the future and the concern that we have in this field. So feel free to ask me any question at any point if you have any quick questions. So one way to understand the transformation, we look at two different situations. We look at the as-is situation, which we are doing now, and we look at the to-be model. So we have two different models, as-is and to-be. And from as-is to be, we have some kind of gaps. We'll see how can we move and cover this gap. So to make this picture more clear, we'll talk about two perspectives, local perspective and global perspective. So I will start with the to-be model from the Sustainable Development Goals, and we all know that we have been talking about the 17 SDGs, and with a particular focus on the goal number 4, which is education, and it's named or titled by quality education. So if I click on this quality education, this is a very quick key highlights. We'll talk about sustainable increase in the number of youth and adults who had a skill. These skill could be a technical, vocational, any type of skill to allow them to have a good employment record and career, whether it's self-employment, skill, decent job, entrepreneurship, and so on. The second point, we will try to eliminate the gender disparities and focus on providing good quality education for everyone, including people who have disability or identified as a vulnerable target. And then the third one is talking about promoting the sustainable educational development. In order to do that, we have to do the inclusive or provide inclusive learning for all learning environment, effective learning environment for everyone. So this is the global perspective. If we are talking about the national perspective or local perspective, we are talking about the Department for Education, the UK one. Here's a just snapshot of the strategy overview. It's span over different time scales, so it's 15 to 20. It's not the same time frame that we have for the SDG, but we are talking about 5 years, and we have some kind of plans. Some of them are working. I'm not sure if you can see this slide, but I'm just trying to highlight a few things here to make sure that you can see what we have in terms of relationship with intelligent system, either directly or indirectly, as we have the 3 goals that we have mentioned here. So it's a bit of quick snapshot now, just to see that we are in the to-be model. We have some kind of challenges. Now we would like to see the as-is model, and the as-is model, just to make it very clear, I have used this figure, which is difficult to read, but it's just from SDG Tracker. So this website tracks where we are now with the Sustainable Development Goal achievement. I'll try to make some kind of zoom if that's... Yeah, so it works well, good. So here we have the education goals, education number 4, and what we have in these colors, you have green, amber, red. If we are talking about red, we have no data identified for a certain country. If we're talking about green, we have some kind of mature data, matrix, or some kind of measures. And if we are talking about amber, we are talking about something in the middle. So this is only about data level. We are not talking about technology. We are not talking about process. We are not talking about anything else. It's only about data, and I will come back to this to explain why I have chosen to talk about the data at this level. So going to the next slide, or before going to the next slide, if I go down for the quality, you see this kind of indicator. So for the quality, you can see that we are doing well with 2 different goals, with the literacy and numeracy, and with the scholarship. We are green. We have 2 red as well, which means that we are in risk for 2 different tasks, and the most of them are amber. So we are not at a very good level at this stage when we are talking about the quality education. So after seeing the as-is model and the to-be model, we can see the gap, and at least from data perspective. So in order to achieve something within this gap, to solve this gap, we need to do some kind of transformation. And the way we see this transformation is the AI. Our claim here is we can use AI techniques and theories in order to make this kind of jump and transform our situation from now until achieving the whole SDG goals that we have been set for all of us. So to understand this, what does AI mean for me? There are more than 10 or 15 viable definitions for AI. I've chosen the simplest one, which I'm trying to explain why we are using AI here. So simply, we have a machine and we have a human. So what we are trying to do is to help the machine to achieve more and progress more in the things that humans are better at. So long time ago, 30 years ago, let's say, humans were better in doing certain things. But the computer learns a lot, and then the computers and machines can achieve more than humans now. But in other areas, we are still ahead of computers. For example, natural language processing. If you talk to any machine now, there are some achievement with different tools, which we'll mention later, but they're still not at the level of the human. So you are better than machines and computers in certain areas. Computers are better than us in certain areas, but we still need to make this kind of augmented AI where we can get the advantage and the strength of each of the 2 components. So this is, in a very quick way, the definition of AI. One of the very big confusion here is about automation. AI is not about automation. Automation is one of the outcomes for applying artificial intelligence in any domain. And it makes this automation more effective. Why? Because it makes it based on the need and the requirement for humans rather than any other requirement coming from the business itself. I would say rigid requirements. So if it's not about automation, what's it about then? It's more about customer experience. So if I am a student, I need to go to the university, I need to receive the most valuable experience that I need to proceed with my courses. If I'm user for example, for Netflix, I need to see the movies that I want to see that movie probably because it's related to my preferences, my goals, my interest, and so on. So in marketing, you have Amazon, you have certain kind of AI algorithm that works in order to optimize your experience as a customer for the whole product. And so on in finance and all of other aspects, you have different AI algorithms that will make your life easier as a customer. This is the main purpose of AI. In order to achieve that, there are hundreds of algorithms, techniques, and so on that are really complicated. We're not going to cover all of them today, or we're not going to cover in detail these techniques, but at least this is the main aspect of the artificial intelligence, customer experience. So it's also about regulation and compliance. So when I design for something, it needs to be within the law. And we can see this now in applying AI techniques in finance. Now, loss of fraud detection and all of these kind of checks are applied by AI techniques, which made a huge investment and a huge impact on every one of us. So again, it's coming back to the augmenting, not replacing. So when everyone talks about AI, robotics, and all of these inventions, I personally not worried about the replacement of the human, because we cannot replace human and we will not replace the human. Yes, we have some kind of augmenting the overall experience, the intelligence as individuals and as organizations. Now it's on us now, our task, to find this kind of augmentation based on certain ethical and effective rules. So that's our job in this main area. So to sum up everything, is customer experience, deliver a scalable solution that is compliance by design, and then in a reasonable cost or within a reasonable cost. So everything is impacted by AI, even the cost. So if you talk about the cost, can we talk about the cost, or can AI help in delivering a good solution within a certain reasonable cost? Yes, it can. I will mention something here that I work with for King's College. I'm representing King's College for a national learning analytics, and learning analytics project is designed to stop the attrition, the problem of attrition. Attrition means non-continuation. What is the relation between attrition? Students stop after the first year or before, and they don't continue with the university. You will see the cost of this from just one of the universities. Now, but let me just explain what we are doing with learning analytics. So what we are doing with learning analytics is we got the data that we have about certain student. This data is not something simple or we can get in any way. We first go for what we call learning management system. In the learning management system, some other universities call it virtual learning environment, where students can log to the system and find their lectures and interact with the student and with the tutor and so on, submit their assignment, and all of these things happen. So there is a massive number of records there and data and everything, so we need to capture that. We have also student record in the system, in the universities. These student record systems are also massive. It holds data since probably 20 years and so on, or some universities. You can find all the students who are registered in certain modules, why did they register for that module, and the program, and their tutor, and all of these details. We have also library data coming from the students who use the library, borrow books, read these books, or online resources, and so on. And we have also attendance data. And the attendance data means that I swipe my card, and then university knows that I'm in the library now, or I'm in this building, attending this lecture or not. We are talking about also some more advanced attendance monitoring approach, which apply computer vision technique, which detect the vision or the image or picture for any student, and then it knows that this student resides in this class and he is attending this, he or she is attending that class at that moment. So this kind of advancement holds massive number of records behind the scene. So this is one of the source for the learning analytics. Another source is the physical learning spaces. I call them mini smart cities, because we, not just only in King's College, we tend now to capture and extract the data from Wi-Fi and all other possible sources and mesh them with student tabling system to understand that they are at some point in this level, because Wi-Fi cannot provide you a very exact detailed data in any time. So we know that Rawad is level 5 now. He's in level 6 in that building. So if I go back to the timetabling, I know he has a class in level 5 maybe in that room. Then I make sure that this is the current join that we have for that specific student. So we have learning spaces that we need to get some data from there. It's not just only Wi-Fi, it's all the system that we use, swiping our cars and moving around the buildings. We also have teaching data. We have assessment data, we have curriculum data as well. So we need to get data from that level as well. And we have cognitive and well-being data. Now, we are not able, to be honest, we are not able to capture all of these kind of different data from different sources. We can't do that, at least now. We are not doing that. Our aim is just to get to that point, but we are not ready for that. Simply, we don't have enough data in all of these fields. Also, we don't have high quality data, and we don't also comply with the design of FAIR, where we have these kind of, accessible, interoperable data. That's the problem that we have right now. We are doing some improvement, but part of this improvement was for one reason. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we're driven by functions. So, for example, if I'm in a university, higher education academy asked me to provide certain number of records or allow students to submit their own assignment to the certain system or apply for a degree, I make sure what I have done in the system just make further leap just to enhance the system to allow students to do that by function. Whatever behind that function data layer is not doing well. I'm just trying to hide something, disable some of the restriction of the system, do some kind of manual extraction for some records and plug it in somewhere. So we were driven by function. Now for the AI time, we will not be able to be driven by function. We have to be driven by data. To be driven by data, we have to go back, step back again, improve our data, make it more interoperable, make it more representative enough, and then we can move forward. So back to the cost. According to the University of New England in Australia, 1% reduction in this attrition means 1.9 million extra income for the university. So this is just only one university, simple university, not that large university, but they have 1.9 million pound income if they stop this attrition by just only 1%, because they invested money when they take the student into each year, and then they discover that most of the students, or at some point, some of them leave the university due to many reasons. They are not happy with the support they receive, they are not getting the experience that they have been promised to be given, or so on. So this one kind of the cost. And if we improve the cost, of course, it's not just only the cost, we'll improve the efficiency of the system, will be more smarter, will be more efficient as well. So another example, we are trying to apply now improved utilization of resources. Many universities in London, and King's College, one of them, is moving towards a hot disk environment. So we go for open plan office, and we start to use that office based on availability. So if we have 500 staff, you probably have 250 or 300 disks. And then you go and use that disk, and then when you go back next day, use another disk. And this is coming, I think, again for Southampton University. They are not building big numbers of facilities to host the academic member of staff. You have to sit everywhere you want, and we stop building theaters. We just focus on building small number of classes that are just designed to host a small number of students. So these kind of new culture of using for the universities and learning spaces also want us to measure this kind of model and see, are we utilizing this model in a good way? Is it enough for us? Do we need to extend? Do we have enough at this level? So what we do sensor, we apply sensor, which is coming from the IoT, Internet of Things, or smart cities, and measure the use by electricity, by even the sound, level of sound, noise, quality of air, and you're doing something like this in King's College, but in one of our campuses, not all of our campuses. So this kind of improved utilization, I worked with a couple of companies who worked really well, applied their own platform, data management platform, and they produced a dashboard for you as an administrative or head of school to see where you are at this stage, how many rooms you have used in last year or last month or last day. So this is another example of the cost for this one. So the AI in education, just a very quick. So when we talk about AI in education, everyone imagine that robot will be teaching the student, which is not the case. We have different ways, for example, for the semantics and capturing the semantic of learnings, and put some kind of rules to improve and recommend resources for students. We have used the chatbots as well to replace the let's say, the trivial help and support that we would like to provide to our students. We also use analytics, as I mentioned before, and we used computer mission, as mentioned before, natural language processes to improve our interaction with the system, and machine learning, which has been discussed by Rabi before. So just a quick slide that I would like to mention here. One of my PhD research published recently is about e-learning framework. We have used the semantics and semantic web rule language to decide what kind of interest I have as a special student in certain class. And then I try to provide certain resources for that student based on his own interest, his own goal, and achievement. If I need some kind of help, the system will be able to provide that help for me in a different way than X student or Y student. We also use business process because this also works with AI in a very well way. And we focus on the learning pedagogy and enhance the e-learning experience as well. So just a very quick way, the summary of that was we were focusing on two different aspects. We've driven by the knowledge about certain domain, which is education, and we were also driven by the behavior of the students. So are they doing well? Are they now in a bad position that they might leave the university or not? So that's about the summary. All of the research we've done highlighted the need for a long-term AI strategy. If you don't have a strategy for AI, you're no longer going to achieve your goal. That's the summary of this. Why? Because we have so many scattered processes within any business. We have resources that need to be skilled. We have some changes, evolving changes happening all the time. You have goals and objectives that might change at any point. And you have dynamics for the environment and human-machine interaction that we need to figure out how it's best can be done. And in addition to the concern for ethics and other stuff. So that's, I think, am I on time now or?
A little over.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So that's my conclusion. Yes, AI can help in develop sustainable education. And if you have any question, I'll be happy to take. So 2 minutes? Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Petru.
Hello.
So could you start your talk now, please? Okay, Petru, I think we can hear you. Okay.
Excellent. That's good news.
But we can't see you at the moment. I don't know. Do you need to share your screen with us?
I think I did that. If you can't see me, it's not that serious as you. So it's better that you can hear me, and then I'll send you my photo. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what is the reason for that, but what is important is just to pass my message, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay.
And 20 minutes? Or okay, so great. Please share your message with us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think to the traditional dilemma, what the dilemma, you have to add another dilemma. Who is guilty when the technological thing is not working? Technology of the human being. Probably in my case is the human being. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alam, and the World Association for inviting me to this round table. And I also want to thank our colleagues from the International Maritime Organization for hosting this event. Probably you know by now that IMO is the guardian of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, one of the oldest international conventions in the world which is still in force. So if the opportunity arises, do not hesitate to organize an event on board of any ship anchored in the port of London. You will be safe. With partners of high reputation like West and IMO, I believe that I ought to say a few words of introduction about the Joint Inspection Unit, which is much less known at sea, on earth, and in the air, although its oversight competence covers all the United Nations organizations dealing with those areas. So some of you know that the Joint Inspection Unit is the only independent external oversight body of the United Nations system mandated to conduct evaluations, inspections, and reviews system-wide. To translate these notions into your academic language, we produce reports that may be the equivalent of PhD thesis based on a very rigorous research methodology. It's just that we have much shorter time to do that. However, unlike purely academic PhD research, our reports are meant to produce impact in the operational life of our 28 participating organizations by the way of the actions that we recommend. Our recommendations may be addressed to any of the executive heads and the governing bodies of the United Nations system organizations, including the General Assembly and the Secretary General of the United Nations. The distance from theory to practice is quite short, this is notably important, the rate of acceptance and the implementation of JIU recommendations is around and over 70%. The main topic, however, of my intervention today is the most recent review we're just completing today on strengthening policy research uptake in the context of 2030 agenda. I mentioned a little bit about the way we recommend action for you to understand if there is any expected impact from our recent reports on policy research uptake. Actually, based upon an assessment of the current landscape in the United Nations system, the report contains 12 formal and 11 soft recommendations meant to improve the quality and the uptake of research in the United Nations system. Our recommendations are not limited to internal policy research cycles. A strong emphasis is put on building bridges between the United Nations and the academic and research communities, which is probably well represented in the room today. Among the expected results of our report is to increase the visibility and the authority of research products in decision-making within the United Nations system. So we made a number of recommendations, and I quote the most important of them. So we recommend them to systematically use policy briefs by executive heads and governing bodies, which, despite what we might think, is not a common practice. Establish a minimum set of quality standards on research production and uptake. Introduce more transparent rules as well as reporting and accountability lines on the costs of the research activities. Assess the research done in the United Nations Research and Training Institutes and specialized research entities in the light of their relevance to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. So you should know probably that we have a couple of research institutes that are autonomous and they are acting as such, as it is the Institute for the Social Development or for Disarmament. And some of the organizations, they have their own specialized internal bodies dealing with research, such as the office that is in charge with the Human Development Report. This is something that you might be aware of. And also research on children, which is done in Florence, where we have the Innocenti Center for Research, UNICEF Innocenti Center for Research. Other recommendations are addressed to the regional economic commissions that are supposed to be the think tanks in the context of the 2030 agenda. We also recommended all the organizations to stimulate the involvement of researchers from the global south, to stimulate capacity building, including research uptake at national level. Also, I think it is important for you to know that we recommended a system-wide policy on open data access, supporting software and research sharing. As far as the bridges between the United Nations system and the academic communities, we have made three important recommendations. The Secretary General and the other executive heads should encourage long-term partnership with academic communities rather than, case-by-case, spontaneous ways of cooperation. The executive heads of the United Nations organizations are called to carry out periodic assessment of research needs, potential suppliers of research products with the long-term objective to strengthen internal capacity and to make a more systematic use of research produced by academia. And also, the Secretary General of the United Nations and the Director General of UNESCO are called to create, on an experimental and voluntary basis, a United Nations academic joint publication board. I would take the liberty to say that this last recommendation concerns you as well as academics directly, and you may use the GIU report to take initiatives in relation with the United Nations. Now, this report on policy research uptake, which will be soon publicly available probably by the end of this week, is part of what someone called the GIU Knowledge Trilogy. Indeed, in 2016, we produced the first part of this trilogy, a report on knowledge management, with emphasis on human factors and policies aiming at stimulating knowledge sharing as a professional asset rather than using knowledge for personal interests and career purposes only. This knowledge management report was the occasion on which I met Ahmad and the World Association for Sustainable Development. This year, we start a new report, the third dimension of the trilogy, namely a review on policy programs and platforms in support of learning in the United Nations system. So you might hear from us again. That was the main object of my presentation, but let me make another two comments related to two fundamental concepts. The first one is the concept of technology, which is abundantly used throughout the 2030 agenda. In my humble personal opinion, we should not fetishize or idolatrize technology as panacea for all our problems. Technologies, and we know it now, technology like moon has its dark side. The United Nations vision should not be technology driven. On the contrary, we should drive technology in support of the human and environmental needs of sustainable development. We should consider carefully all the implications and all the fine prints of the commercial advertising of new technologies. As it was concluded also by scientists in the Club of Rome, we should redefine progress when it is about technology. We should not identify automatically the progress of technology with human progress. The United Nations is aware of those challenges. I would mention a few actions that were taken already. First of all is the Secretary General strategy on new technologies. Then it is the International Labour Organization report on the future of the work. They focus on some sections very much on the implication of the new technology on the issues of global concern, including the future of work. Also, the International Telecommunication Units started already since last year a number of reflections on artificial intelligence. So obviously, debates like yours today are very important in deepening the reflections on how technology could take control over the destiny of humankind or just simply help us to continue to be master of our own destiny. Again, on our side as Joint Inspection Unit, I promoted the introduction of technology-related issues on the traditional agenda of our oversight concerns. One is the report on cloud computing, which will be ready this year, probably by the end of the first semester on cloud computing. And then for the next year, we want to do a critical analysis of blockchain applications, which will probably be done next year. Another key concept relevant for your roundtable today is partnership. In my experience as an inspector, I realized that partnerships are unavoidable in any attempt by the United Nations to play fully its role as catalyst of international cooperation for the delivery of global public goods. Partnership for innovations were proposed in our review on the relationship between the United Nations and the private sector. As you know, the private sector is now to be considered a very important partner whose resources will be crucial for the implementation of 2030 agenda. And also the partnership with academia in knowledge management, in policy research, and in learning came to the foreground as driving factors that may lead to a happy marriage between technologies and real human values and needs, the one promoted by the United Nations. With that, I have exhausted the points I wanted to share with you. Of course, technology allowing it, permitting it, I stay with you and I'm ready to respond to any questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Petru. Do we have any questions for Petru? None.
I just have a... Can I use my mic?
Yes.
Petru, thank you very much, as always, for an illuminating and a really comprehensive presentation. I just have a cheeky question for you. So you rightly pointed out that technology should not be driving development, that we should be driving technology. So in this battle between technology and human endeavor, who do you think is going to win and how are you going to win? And as we move forward, Petru?
Yes, thank you. I understood the question, and of course I oversimplify the dilemma, but the point is that we feel very, very often, in particular in the United Nations system, that we are kind of witness, and the force that is driving us forward is the technology, and we are very often used by the technology rather than the other way around. So I would say that once we raise this fundamental dilemma, technology, human factor, it is our duty, in particular in the United Nations, to be optimist. I think in the end, we'll take control, we'll pay a price, we'll pay the price as we did in other cases of technological progress. You know, even at this stage, we praised that at the beginning the advent of internet, and then we discovered that internet is used for cybercrime, for a violation of privacy, for the hate speech, for a lot of there is a lot of negative in the progress of technology. So at least we should be aware, and I use the words that are not very often used in the UN language: fetishize, idolatrize technology. Yes, we have to follow technology, we have to follow progress, but then we should be careful. And this is what we in the United Nations are supposed to do, to be careful. That is the example of blockchain, for instance. Just a simple example, you know, whatever we hear about blockchain is very positive. It's, you know, emphasizing the virtues of the new technology. And everyone is preaching to us that this is the future. But we do not discuss the energy imprint and the cost in energy, for instance, of this technology. And if we see the sustainable development goals as a whole, we should look at the things together, the positive and the negative, and we should find the right balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Petru. Thank you, Petru. I'd now like to introduce Professor Siraj Sait from the University of East London. He's Director of Research there, and he's going to talk to us more about governance around information, I think.
Do you know where my presentation is? Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another session of really critical thinking on artificial intelligence. So I think in the morning session we have actually seen the debate, as actually Petru put it quite well, between the optimists, the realists, and the skeptics. But I'm going to move away from just talking about strategies and applications to thinking more about governance. So among the issues of what data, who uses it, how you use it, whose benefit, what impact, these are broader questions, not just of strategy and policy, but of governance itself. So I'm going to talk about it in the sense of gender-responsive urban governance. And I'm really speaking in the backdrop of the demand for evidence-based interventions, as well as monitoring and evaluation, where obviously artificial intelligence plays a very important role. So let me just frame the debate. So we know that when we talk about sustainable development goals, this is not merely about a feel-good factor, but the fact that we need to make progress in tangible form, where we need evidence, we need actually data. And therefore, artificial intelligence, which offers interventions at various levels, also comes in to look at underpinning strategies and offering the applications that can actually help us reach those destination and goals. But we talked about how artificial intelligence is not neutral and it carries potential and risk. So I would follow what Petru has said to note that as we monitor the SDGs, artificial intelligence is useful both for documenting positive change and to look at the risks and the dangers that are involved. Now, in all of this, we know that gender or women's equality, as well as diversity in general, is a critical dimension. And therefore, we need to evaluate to what extent our present approaches in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals are actually able to help us move in that direction. So there are issues that have already been flagged in the morning, such as women's participation in artificial intelligence in the various forms, as we said, as the managers, producers, consumers, and impact creators. So questions of access, benefits are important. And so what I'm proposing to do is that we could actually look at urban governance as a sort of framework, and I'm going to bring together the kind of movement and transformation we've seen when we talk about sustainable urbanization, for example, in smart cities, land rights, and conflict. So within the short period that I have, it won't be possible for me to delve into considerable detail, but I'm just looking to add them as perspectives or studies which has help us move forward. Now, what's been talked about today is it collision or is it collaboration between two important movements, if I can call them, at this point of time? So on one hand, we have the SDGs, and I think we spoke about this today in the presentations. Clearly not only huge and ambitious, but very expensive and in some ways elusive. And that is why artificial intelligence comes in as a possible tool, or shall we say, a process of identifying where the gaps are and trying to address it. So there are 17 goals, 169 targets, 230 indicators, and many of us are working in each one of those indicators, and I'm going to come in a moment to one of those examples in terms of women's land rights. But look at the fourth industrial revolution, 4.0 as we call it. It fundamentally alters the way that we live, work, we relate to each other, what is meant by development, and how we reach there. So in the context of artificial intelligence, of course we know what grabs the headlines. The McKinsey report recently, which says that we could add 1.3 trillion in terms of the economy by 2030. But of course, the results of that we say are going to be showing only after substantial investment that we make around 2025, etc. So digital technology is not something for us to decide. It's ubiquitous throughout societies, offering a new wave of opportunities in how we use information and how we convert them into actions. But is it all about growth? I think that's what the point that has been made today. It is also about equity, it's about fairness, it's about peace, it's about stability, it's about development, it's about human rights, and also about equal participation, for example, gender equality. So what is the whole debate today, or how we can really mine the potential of artificial intelligence, but balance that social, economic, and environmental and economic impact. Now, it doesn't help us to go back to the SDGs because, as much as I mentioned, we know that it's a very limited framework in terms of science, technology, and innovation. Therefore, it is for players like yourselves, ourselves, to take this forward to define how this can work. Now, when I talk about gender, the first thing that would come to your mind, of course, is this screaming gap in the artificial intelligence workforce. So at the World Economic Forum in 2018, the report was quite exhaustive in finding a huge gender gap in artificial intelligence workforce. Only 22% of professionals with artificial skills are actually female. And that's more than the gap that exists in most of the industries, but actually predictable, because if you look at the United Kingdom, only 15% of employees are working in substantial STEM roles, 9% in engineering. So when we speak about the whole issue of who are the producers, the generators, the consumers, and ultimately, the stakeholders, where are the women? And again, we need to address at what level they are at. So when we talk about machine learning technologies, what are the numbers, but also in a variety of other governance roles. So at University of East London, we have a very proactive approach to women's participation in terms of creating those kind of skills, whether in terms of recruitment, whether in terms of skills, employability. So one of the things that we do in terms of our colleagues is work on something called Athena Swan, which, as you know, is on gender equality, equal opportunity, leadership, mentorship, and so on and so forth. So the gender balance in the workshop, why is it so? It's because the models are largely male, it is perceived to be male-dominated, there's a lack of work-life balance, and the educational systems are not supportive enough. And then there are other issues of pay gaps and leadership and work ethic and so on and so forth. So we need those kind of multi-skills and capacities to make the best of Industry 4.0. And there are clearly opportunities and risks as well as development, applications. Now, I've only talked about the workforce. In fact, women are managers, producers, consumers. Their participation is important. But I just want to talk about the diversity of women as well as intersectionality, that artificial intelligence is not an isolated medium. It is linked, as was pointed out, to primary interventions such as education, empowerment, policies, and etc. So issues of data access, ownership, and choices are all there. Let me zoom into women and the SDGs. There are, in fact, gender is a cross-cutting issue that goes right through. I'm just going to look at SDG 2, which is all about hunger. Gender equality, of course, is SDG 5, industry, innovation, infrastructure, SDG 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities. And I'll talk a little bit about SDG 16, which is on peace, justice. And so let's look at smart cities, land rights, and conflict situation. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing responses, pollution, traffic, water efficiency, green spaces. I could go on. But does it really mean that it's just what Google, Amazon, Apple, or Uber do? We need to ensure that they're inclusive cities. So right to the city becomes important. For women, for example, adequate housing, water, sanitation, health, education, etc. And when we talk about this sustainability, it is for whom? Is it for the slums? It is only for the elite? So the question of urban governance therefore has to be framed in how participation in AI generates benefits for all, and gender responsiveness is there from planning to decision making. So urban services, we have a lot of excellent examples. We've talked about it today in terms of transport, governance, safety, public spaces, even in terms of planning processes themselves, which is all very great. We've seen examples such as the M-Pesa in Kenya, where the transactions through mobile, which could not have been possible otherwise. But wait a minute. We also have a lot of evidence that when artificial intelligence used, they could be to the detriment of, let's say, women, minorities, or youth. I mean, Amazon, for example, noticed in 2018 that its artificial intelligence recruitment system did not like the word female. Why? Because it is programmed in a particular way. And that many of its deliveries disadvantage African American communities because the way the demographic data was entered, interpreted, and used. So artificial intelligence is only as good as gender disaggregated data, which is actually scarce, which I'll come to. In India, for example, there's a huge fight at the Supreme Court because the government of India claims that Aadhaar cards, as it's called, or ID cards, will empower people. But there are huge challenges in terms of not just its accuracy, anonymity, but also its misuse, and how will it actually empower women in terms of male-headed households, and so on and so forth. Now, an area that I've been working on is what is called SDG Indicator 1.4.2, which essentially uses data to document and to monitor and evaluate women's access to property, what we call tenure security. And interestingly, it's founded on two components of tenure security. One is, what are the documented tenure rights that are legally recognized by governments? So that could be formal, informal, and so on and so forth. But the second one, and this is important, is that your rights and your belonging and your identity are not about data all times, but it's about perceptions. It's about subjective satisfaction or empowerment. So the second one happens to be perceptions of tenure rights as legally secure, regardless of whether these rights are documented. So we're actually proceeding on two bases. We need all the data we can, but where data is not allowed, other things equally matter. And that makes actually a lot of common sense. But this raises challenges. So at the expert group meeting that I was at, women, social and community groups were upset that this information, which was taken from them, probably misinterpreted, without proper resources being given, without proper verification. I think that was a point that was made in the morning. And ultimately, it was, the mandate that was with the UN Statistical Office, the governments, rather than with NGOs, with the community itself. So there are big issues in how data is going to be used, and there is a fear that data will actually take away decades of women's rights that have been there on the basis of, frankly, dubious data. So I'm merely suggesting that, well, the quest for data continues, and artificial intelligence can be great, but that data, as was talked about in the morning, could easily be turned around to be misused and to peddle fake news, false assumptions, and stuff. My final point is, in fact, about artificial intelligence in conflict. I'm thinking again about women. You're all aware that whether you're talking about hurricanes or conflicts, artificial intelligence and technology generally provides easy information sometimes, which transcends, physical barriers to provide mapping. So, which area to point in case of floods or in conflict where there's war that's taking place. So that's great. And in fact, to come back to it, you have refugees who are using apps which talk about danger, sometimes uses identities, sometimes in applications, services, communications. So no doubt that's huge. In fact, I would say that I was just looking at one other app which is called CogSolve, which is preventive in terms of being able to understand conflicting positions and try to, I'm not talking about robots coming in and robotic intervention in solving human problems, but quite a lot of neutralization and so on that takes place. Artificial intelligence is used for humanitarian aid, delivery, rehabilitation. We talked about health, we talked about education, a variety of things. But there is a big problem in terms of women's access to technology, just beyond mobiles. And I'm coming to the whole point of not just having mobiles or computers, but in terms of contributing to producing, managing, and responding to data. So what are my conclusions? They're very, very simple, and I think they echo much of what we have said together. First is, we need to be conscious of the potential as well as dangers, Petru's point, and that we need to recognize that this has to require intervention at various levels in terms of skills, teaching, innovating, building AI systems that are gender responsive. And the point that again has been made by this panel, thank you, that we need policies, strategies, and reforms, that unless we have primary interventions in place, we cannot develop artificial intelligence applications to actually further them. So we need a range of other instruments, policies, ethics, practices, and that's what the challenge is going to be for us. Not that we are able to somehow produce data, but whether the data is embedded within systems, practices, and institutions, and ultimately there is a consistent, credible, and as what we call a durable response to development. And finally, let's take the wheel away from big data analytics and intelligence to ensure that it is judged not only by the quantum of what it achieves, but whether it's fairly distributed and available to men and women, youth, and all communities. Thank you very much. So gender, artificial intelligence, and development. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions on that presentation? Please.
I'm sure everyone can hear me, is it? Okay, now, since the discussion about AI started, there is always one element that is missing. I haven't heard anyone suggesting or giving suggestions as to how AI can be implemented or introduced to Africa. because that's really my concern. Or whatever technology it is, I would like to see that Africa is included. So what suggestions do you have for Africa in terms of AI?
So first of all, Karen, thank you for the question. And I think it's important that whatever progress we make globally, that it's not concentrated within the particular, Western world. But luckily, the reality has been that we've seen phenomenal development, not only in parts of Asia, but also in Africa. But I think your question is not so much about whether there are few elites who are able to access and drive the AI agenda, but whether it is available for, normal people. And that's why we've somehow been able to bypass the limitations of physical infrastructure and technology. And AI, or shall we say technology generally, has been used. Let me give you an example. So in Kenya, which you might be familiar with, Nairobi, you have Kibera, the slums over there, where it's always been very difficult to actually produce the data and so on. Now, self-help and people community-led data using mapping, community mapping over there, has in fact provided the kind of credible but really detailed information that has allowed the government to come here and saying, well, we looked at your methodology, we looked at the stuff that you have, it works for us, and we're going to develop policies. But I think your point again is, okay, that's an example, but where is the evidence that we're able to float the scale? And that's why you're absolutely right. We have not yet reached the point where we're able to put either our resources or our political commitments to ensure that that is spread more widely. Thank you.
Any further questions? That's it. Thank you, Professor Sait.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to introduce Dr. Ihab Tewfik, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Westminster and a qualified nutritionist. And I think, sorry, I don't have the title of your presentation, but I think you're going to talk more about information, data, and public health.
That's correct. Thank you very much. And I think Joseph would be happy about this presentation because we're starting with Africa. So we work in Ghana, Nigeria, and then move to India, and so on. So that's probably going to be the focus of my presentation. First of all, I would like to thank the UAL University for inviting us, WASD, and Alam, the team, and the International Maritime Organization for giving us the platform to present our work, and which is very close to the SDGs. In fact, you know that there is a huge link, and in fact, the nutrition overlap and interlink with the sustainable development goals in different level, from sustainable food production to system infrastructure to health system to peace and stability and partnership. So across all the 17 the goals, nutrition has a contribution, and whether directly or indirectly. But if we take you a bit away, but with the same artificial intelligence, but we're having more information of most of the country and how at global level nutrition is affected. Currently, the word malnutrition is covering two sides. You need to bear in mind that malnutrition is covering the overnutrition, that people consuming more than they need in terms of calories, but also undernourishment and undernutrition, which is majority of the world is suffering, particularly our children. They are suffering two types of this undernourishment. We have the stunt children or the wasted children. Stunt mean they have a short stature, while wasted that they are skinnier than they supposed to be in terms of the body weight. But also we have also the overconsumption, which is leading to overweight and obesity, as you know, is globesity now. We also identify that there are several countries in the world suffering from more than one problem, and we call it whether it's a double burden or triple burden of disease. For example, we have 72 countries in the world suffering from stunting. The height of their individual is shorter than it's supposed to be. We have also 125 countries in the world suffering from anemia, and over 95 countries suffering overweight and obesity. But you can see also the overlap between stunting, for example, and overweight. We have about 4 countries suffering from both. And also we have 38 countries suffering stunting and anemia. And we have anemia and overweight. Can you imagine somebody is overweight or obese, but at the same time their iron content is lower than average. And therefore we have in this between 52. While we have a total of 29 countries in the world suffering from 3 of things together, the triple burden of disease, which is stunting, overweight, and anemia. If we look at this map, it's showing that the first map, the red colored one, it's showing the map of undernourishment. And you can see is the Asia and Africa are the main player, and South America. But if you look carefully, these are the ones who are suffering from less food, but at the same time, you can see how fertile. If you look at the green map, it's the same country, same part of the world, the best producing for the highest quality of healthy food. And this is something very strange and paradox. While the country who are suffering from undernourishment are the same country who are able to produce a fertile food for us. So this is something we need an intervention here. Something making us very wonder why this happened. How come Africa, the food basket of the world, is suffering from undernourishment? And therefore, we need a new approach with the help of Sustainable Development Goals, able to identify priority. And therefore, we came up with the idea that we should produce food from the same land to feed their population living on this same land. So therefore, the idea of tailored functional recipes come across and become one of the most vibrant approach to use to process the food for local community. We define it in a publication, and our publication defined TFR, or tailored functional recipes, as the food that is naturally occurring, locally accessible and affordable. This underpins the food security. The word security now is included in our definition, but this tailored functional recipes is not consumed in a common concentration, but in uncommon concentration as part of the usual diet. So we offer people who are going to consume this, their natural food, but in highest concentration that they are not normally consuming in this way. Having this for a short to long period of time, we found change in their physiological and biochemical reaction and benefits, and that's managed to reduce and control and modulate the chronic disease. And therefore, we took this innovation to Nigeria to address the HIV/AIDS problem. We took it also in India, and from India we managed to help people suffering from cancer, where the undernourishment or underweight is the more prevalent symptoms once people have the cancer. We also took it to Ghana to help and enhance the Ghana school feeding program around the world. Around Ghana, and this is particularly true for 60 to 80 years old kids, where they're suffering undernourishment, and the Ghana Health Service and Ghana School Feeding Program was trying to develop a meal, and we managed to enhance it. Now we are taking the same TFR, or tailored functional recipes approach, to Ethiopia and helping mothers to help their kids with complementary food. So in Ghana, when we looked at what's happening in Ghana for Ghana School Feeding Program, first of all, the Ghana School Feeding Program started in 2005. Until date, we don't have a significant improvement in the nutritional status of the school children. But when we looked at what they are distributing white rice and tomato sauce. First of all, Ghana is not producer of white rice. So they are importing white rice in order to give it for a meal. So the food is not grown in the same land, and that's where our ideas and TF are coming in and helping them. And we looked at what it can be done. We had a service evaluation of Ghana school feeding program through a 3-phase intervention. The first phase was to meet and do a survey with the teacher, with the parent, with the caterer, providing the meal for the schools, and then take what is available and knowing our boundaries. So we start to produce a formula, and this formula, we call it a school meal. And this school meal is a locally produced food ingredient, but we are putting in an architecture way that it can produce the maximum strength of macronutrient that we needed in our meal. And then making this meal available for school children. So they tested, they found it more palatable, and we managed to produce for them 3 different meals. So rather than having the Ghana school feeding program, which is white rice with tomato sauce, we managed to produce for them 3 different meals, so they have the choices whether they need today something with fish, something based on potato, something based on soya, so they have more on their menu. And then we tested as a pilot over 6 months on 180 children, and another 9 months to scale up for 330 children. And we managed that to see that with the local ingredient that they are having in their own land, I didn't bring them food from United States or UK to take it without there, or giving them tablets or nothing. Whatever they grow there, we put it, we analyze the nutrient in it, put it in a different formula, and give it for them to taste. And we found that this formula we prepared with the maximum strengths of the micronutrient, particularly vitamin A, omega-3, and macronutrient, protein, fat, carbohydrates. And when we looked, we used the local available ingredient like moringa. Moringa is locally and very abundant in the streets where it's free of charge. So we took the leaves of moringa and we extract or dry it and powder it. We also use local produced maize and malted one. They have lots of anchovy by the sea in Ghana. So we dry this anchovy. This is a very good source of protein and good source of calcium and omega-3, but we bound it or ground it into powder that we can add flavor to the meal. But normally they don't eat it because they say it's very small and lots of bone in it. So we managed to dry it and powder it, and we use it in our formula in addition to soya flour and potato. These are the main ingredient that we are able to capture and collect it from the ground in Ghana, and we managed to use this and employ it to produce 3 different meals. These 3 different meals were prepared hot and ready to eat at the school level and cost cheaper than the Ghanaian school feeding program, which is just the rice and tomato sauce. Ours were cheaper for 3 pence cheaper than what the normal and ready to eat. So we have a better varieties and a better ingredient and better nutritional that it can help with the kids to overcome the anemia or the low hemoglobin level comparing what the government meal used to be. This is case study here. That's 1 year before that when we started her hemoglobin, we give her a name as a Katie. Hemoglobin of Katie was 8 grams per deciliter, which is low, and that she was lethargic. She was inactive in class and not in playground. However, after she consumed our meal for 6 months, we can see her progressing and her hemoglobin moved to the high level to 11.8. She is playful, enjoy the school, able to understand science and maths and biology. So she was more into it. Even the parents keep asking us, what did you feed our kids at lunchtime? Because she is more active than before. And then we looked at what we have before and after. The first 2 columns here, the control, and this is the, sorry, it's not showing there, but the first 2 columns on your left-hand side, you can see that those are the schools that they are in Ghana, but they are government school, but they have no access either to the program. The program of Ghanaian school feeding program has not arrived to them yet, or they are not accessing to our school meal, the one that we distributing our nutritional composed formula that we are intervening with. And in the middle, you can see the before and after the hemoglobin level of the school feeding program, and the very right, you can see our school feeding program before and after. You can see that the level of hemoglobin has significantly increased after 6 months to 9 months of intervention, whether it's pilot or scale up respectively. And that's meaning that our kids or our school children are no longer wasted, they are no longer stunt, but in fact they reach and attain a normal height and normal weight, and compared favorably with the WHO growth chart. So in a simple way, a nutshell, we can share that our nutritional formula, which is cost less, and it can able to meet the hemoglobin level that the kids was suffering, and hence they are no longer wasted or stunned, while the government, with some help from us, we're able to enhance the governmental meal. And if they just consider our meal, and we are happy to share it with them, of course, we already in the way of publishing to sharing the intelligence of this simple way to improve the nutrition status of school children, so they can also achieve the same. Unfortunately, with continuously consumption of rice and just tomato sauce, they did not achieve, but they have anemia and remain anemic, but they just put some body weight. This body weight is based on the empty calories that they are eating it, but not adding anything. So we would like really them to consider our support on this. We took this idea, which is the TFR or thyroid function recipes, and we work with the team from India. The team from India were able to look at our formula and consider it for people having cancer. And you know, by cancer, by default, the system shift, the body, shift into catabolism. That means they are no longer putting in weight. People with cancer, in fact, they are start to lose weight. So we were trying to sustain the body weight while people receiving chemoradiotherapy. And that's the main purpose of our intervention there. And we managed with just tweaking and changing the content of their normal bread or normal bread making flour. The atta is the flour they are using it, and we improve it to atta, the improved flour. And rather than using the Bengal gram and the barley to the very left on your hand side, you just mix it with some water and oil, you can get a chapati bread. We managed to add roasted soya bean. We managed to add powder flaxseed to release the omega-3 in it. We managed to add the amaranth leaves, which is a good source of vitamin A, and we give it as a good boost to the existing chapati recipes, and we managed to produce atta, the improved flour, they can use it and make some improved bread for them. Once they ate it, their immune system has been enhanced, and also we managed to maintain their body weight during the chemoradiotherapy, and that was a very good plus, because once you get free through the free of cancer cells after chemoradiotherapy, your body weight will start to attain again and start to build in new tissue and shifting it. We took it also to another context, the idea of thyroid function recipes. We took it to Nigeria. Nigeria government suffering from high level and high number of people living with HIV. We have today in Nigeria 3.5 million people suffering from HIV. With the help of nutrition, we managed to add into another way of treatment and therapeutic nutrition, where people can consume a soup form of formula. What is this formula form? Is carrot, dry powder, roasted soya powder, and moringa again, and millet. We mix these four items together, 25% each, and we managed to get a formula. This formula managed to increase the number of immune cells over a period of 6 months of consumption. So people, if they are on a medication, which is more recommended for anyone HIV positive to get the medication straight away, but also they can have this soup and this soup will boost the immune system and produce more of these cells for immune cells and manage to sustain them into the HIV rather than going to AIDS. You know, by time the HIV positive people, after 6 months or 1 year, they move and they lose lots of their cells, immune cells, and they manage to get into the AIDS stage. The AIDS is a very end stage of this virus, and they need to hospitalize and affecting the economy by losing their jobs and leaving their family and become a burden on the Ministry of Health. And therefore, sustaining this stage or this final stage as HIV with the nutritional support, we managed to change and lever this type of anomaly or disease related to nutrition, and we kept them into HIV positive, but at the same time their immune cells is grown in the number and the level has increased over the period of time, and that's become a measure. Now our target is to run a workshop for people who are already HIV patient or for the caregivers, and showing them how to prepare the HIV meal. We call it Amtewa meal. We managed to patent it, and we got the patent here that these 4 ingredients, put them together, can be a very boost for the immune cells and producing more of it. And also we have also a good team from the Harvard University. They are supporting us on this, and we are not just developing in workshops for just sustainability plan in Nigeria, but we are taking to another land. The DR Congo are very interested to be part of this, and we develop for them also their own recipe to fight HIV over there. So in conclusion, the innovation of the TFR and support and the progress it's achieved on the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly on the food security, making this approach of TFR very sustainable, and also opening up the point to more bioavailable, bioactive micronutrients in the ingredient of this meal, because we are using natural food, we are using natural product, we are not giving them artificial tablets, synthetics form, that's the bioavailability and absorption, it's going to be questionable here. We also open up something more important, we open new businesses for farmers, so we enhance the local food to small to medium enterprises to be flourishing over there in the African country. So the farmers are part of the sustainability plan, producing food product, and we managed to underpin here that the local resources and local awareness of nutritional importance of the local agriculture produce. How important for African to know exactly that their land can produce a nutritious food, so let's use it to protect us from different type of disease. Our collaborator is huge list, but I managed to mention a few of them. My colleague and my wife as well, Dr. Tewfik from the International Forum for Public Health. She is the main partner with us for the formulation of all these recipes and taking into the field for practice and assessment. We have also team from Nigeria. We have team from UK, team from Ghana, from India, and all of them, we are very pleased for their participation and support so far, and we take it further. If you have any question, please let me know, and I'm happy for any clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tewfik. Are there any questions on that presentation?
He can start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely exciting presentation. Darren Menachemson from ThinkPlace. One of the issues, I guess, that causes stunting is often the fact that there's a lot of very cheap, low nutrition food that substitutes for high nutrition food in these types of contexts. And what I saw here was the potential is incredible. Do you feel that there are any high potential business models that might get large food manufacturers, etc., picking up this type of technology and introducing that so it becomes mainstream rather than a competing substitute?
Well, thank you for your question. There is an idea here. What the idea of TFR or tailored function recipes, it can be applied to any type of disease that nutrition is part of it. So nutrition related disease is wide, and we talked here on the undernourishment, but also we have other side of it, which is obesity and the hypertension, and we have cardiovascular disease, diabetes type 2, and so on. So the ingredient that we are looking at, it's not a type of strange ingredient. It's very well known to us, but the innovation here coming in the way that we apply the concept of mixing those ingredients. For example, if I ask you what did you eat on Monday, what you eat on Tuesday till the weekend, you will tell me I ate one item today, second item, second day, following day, and so on. You mentioned to me several items. I take this knowledge from you, and I start to analyze these ingredient of food ingredient and make a comprehensive spreadsheet with all macronutrient of it. And then I try to work out which macronutrient help the absorption of another macronutrient or micronutrient. Like some vitamin help the absorption of other vitamin. Like some vitamin help the absorption of minerals, and so on. But also at the same time there is antagonism, where some ingredient stop the absorption of the others. Like iron stop the absorption of zinc. But vitamin C help the absorption of iron. So we can see that if we are to put together the correct ingredient with the correct mapping of micronutrient, we are able to produce a meal that it's a high strength in nutrients. And we call it nutrient dense rather than calorie dense. And that's how it can apply anywhere. The simplicity of this, it is a sustainable and not expensive. It's a very low technology. And this is exactly what we done with the immune cells. We looked at the literature telling us a lot. If you want to increase your immune cells and boost it, you need to include in your food selenium, vitamin A, you want some iron, you want some zinc, and so on. So we looked at where these micronutrients are in the food intake of poor Nigerian family, where they eat only one meal a day, and whatever left over in this meal, it will be the dinner. So we looked at it, what they eat across the whole week, but rather than having on Monday, Tuesday, as I said before, let's mix from Monday to Sunday, mix them together in a formula, and we found that our 4 ingredients, put them together, you get the maximum macronutrient for the immune cells to increase the number. Hence, we managed to do a significant achievement in their immune cells, and they're trying to strain down the progression to AIDS. We managed to hold it into where it is, and the Ministry of Health is now appreciating very well. Now what we need one step further, to train people and cut on the middleman. We don't want the third party coming and putting orange flavor on this soup that we develop, or put chocolate flavor and sell it with a price. No, we would like the patient themselves, the first beneficiary of this meal, to get to learn how to prepare, because it's very cheap. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Joseph?
Okay, I'm going to put it this way. Very good work that you've done. But what I see, where the problem lies in Africa, there is plenty of food. You have already indicated it. You have explained it to them, but it has taken a foreigner to go and explain and show them what they should be eating. Now, that tells you priorities in Africa, they are divided into so many things. Let me give you an example. Today, in Ghana today, the president of Ghana has decided to build a cathedral, spend all the money on the cathedral instead of putting the money into health and education. So you see, then another problem that you have, what you have actually said, that you have developed these formulas, you will get all these corrupt guys, they will start telling you, you know what, we need to make money. So forget about the guy, in the village or the small family in the village. If we can get small money, we are okay. See, this is where the problem really lies. I would say priority, and also it is a political issue.
Ideas to the land. We don't really have but a Ghanaian or Nigerian individual who is full-time working in their country, and they are coming and asking us what can be done, and they come and represent their organization. For example, the Nigeria case was a delegate from the Ministry of Health who are very keen to, in addition to what pharmaceutical drugs they are giving to people with HIV, but they found that they cannot survive this because £20 per week for one HIV person, it's a huge burden when you multiply it by 3.5 million. So you can see the investment of the Ministry of Health just to give medication won't be enough, even if you are very, very rich and oil-making country. But therefore, we found that from within the Ministry of Health, there are teams in order to help with the solution. And therefore, when we've done, we managed to train the trainer. So we managed to pass the technology, and they are now in their hand to take it forward for the sustainability plan. So they are training directly their patients. And again, the government inclusion here, it's a very limited, because even if the government, with all the points you have raised, this are not interested, but what we are seeing here is the patient himself, with the mother of having 3 kids or 5 kids, and she is HIV positive, unfortunately, and she wants a solution immediately for her. So what we are aiming here is to train these particular mothers and giving her the type of the formula that she might be able to use it directly without a third party get involved in between. So passing the technology or whatever knowledge we have onto the first line beneficiary, which is the patient directly, this is exactly what we managed to achieve, and that's guarantee the sustainability. So with the government support or without their support, I think we are able to reach our target population directly and give them the nutrition advice. I hope I answered your point. Yeah.
I will just add just a bit to that. I'm Dr. Tewfik. I am the wife who has been involved in this project. We have waited so long to get world's governments to participate fully so we can do the changes that needed. It doesn't work. We should understand that it doesn't work. So whatever the help we can get from the government, we should appreciate, but main responsibility lies with the population. And this huge population in the world, we can find the right people to work with. So we can find the right farmers, we can find the right pharmacists, we can find the right industry representative to work with, and we get together and we create projects. It's gone the days that we dreamt of government giving a pot of money, millions of pounds, to do one project. It's gone. We couldn't. Development goals, you can see the table. We haven't established most of them. So that means we have to change tactics. And the tactic is, I think we succeeded with this project. Government supports a bit, the workers supports a bit, patients supports fully, population supports fully, and then the results are exceptional, as you can see.
There's once for all. That's the only way
Which is not possible.
to resolve this. Otherwise, it's going to be
Which
always
is
a
not
problem.
possible. Let me tell you, if we have got only maybe 2 to 3 minutes, I will make it quick. I am half Kenyan, half Ugandan, but I grew up in Uganda, and where my mother comes from is a very tiny region of about maybe 1.5 million. And there is a king there. The king, he gave me, because they are developing a university, he gave me a space to go and teach people, maybe and whatever. But I came up with a very small idea. I said, well, look, you see, Bunyoro now, that's where the oil is being discovered, is going to be, it is like the center of East Africa. You are going to have people from Rwanda, Sudan, everywhere, they will be passing through. Let us put just a simple form of entertainment. So, and they gave me a huge auditorium. Said, okay, bring a cinema in. I took films, I took projectors and stuff like that. Now, the woman who is supposed to be in charge of the project, she came and said, well, you know what? Let us take the project out of the king. Let us make it private. So we make the money, then we produce. You see, you guys, you're very patient because the people you are dealing with, it's a good job.
It's worth work towards it. We have to be dreamers.
Any more question if you would like? Yeah. Thank you.
No further questions. Well, could I ask everybody to show their appreciation for the 3 speakers?
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.